She stepped onto the plane with calm dignity, her husband and 2 children close behind her, all 4 holding first-class boarding passes. There was no fuss, no entitlement, just a family traveling together, respectful and ready for their journey. But minutes after they settled into their seats, everything shifted. A flight attendant approached, her voice clipped and formal, and without explanation told the woman she had to move to the back of the plane. There were no questions, no clarifications, only a quiet demand delivered in front of her family and a cabin full of silent onlookers. No one intervened. No one asked why. The woman stood up and left without protest, not knowing that her quiet compliance would soon turn the entire flight and the airline itself in its head. Hours earlier, the airport had hummed with typical early afternoon calm when Julian and Celeste Hart arrived at the gate with their kids. Their daughter, Layla, clutched a tiny pink backpack shaped like a bunny, her face bright with excitement. Beside her, 6-year-old Micah peppered Julian with questions about how airplanes worked. Julian answered each one with steady patience, smiling at their enthusiasm. Celeste kept a gentle hand on Layla's shoulder, speaking softly as she reminded them to stay close and be courteous. The Harts moved as a unit, quiet, poised, and easy to overlook if not for their grounded presence. When their boarding passes were scanned, everything went smoothly. Julian nodded to the gate agent, who barely looked up, and ushered the kids down the jet bridge. First class wasn't an everyday luxury for them, but this trip was special. It had been booked far in advance, a treat for the kids and a chance to relax. As they settled into their wide leather seats, Layla was fascinated by the reclining button, laughing as her seat glided back. Celeste helped her get comfortable while Julian handed Micah a set of headphones. Everything felt right until a shadow blocked the aisle. "Excuse me," the flight attendant said, glancing at the screen in her hand. Her name tag read Ms. Tinsley. Her smile was tight and practiced. "There appears to be a seating discrepancy." Julian looked up, confused. "These are our seats. We checked in this morning." "Yes, Ms. Tinsley replied, "but we have a balance issue in the cabin and need to adjust the seating. I'll need your wife to move to the rear of the aircraft." Celeste blinked. "I'm sorry, these are paid first-class tickets. We booked together row 2, seats A through D." "I understand, Ms. Tinsley repeated, though her tone didn't match the words. "We need to make room for an elite status passenger. It's just a temporary change." Julian's jaw tightened. "Why her? Why not anyone else?" Ms. Tinsley didn't hesitate. "Sir, I'm not going to debate this. If she doesn't move, we'll call the ground crew." People nearby began to glance over, eyes peeking above magazines and devices. No one said a word. Celeste kissed Layla on the forehead and forced a soft smile. "I'll be just a few rows away, sweetie." She picked up her small bag and walked down the aisle with grace. Not a single person offered to trade seats. She passed row after row of blank stares and murmured apologies, finally settling into a cramped seat between 2 strangers in the back. She sat upright, hands folded in her lap, trying not to let the sting settle into her bones. Back in first class, the warmth had left the row. Layla slouched in her seat, Micah's eyes darting between his sister and father. "Why did they make Mom leave?" he asked softly. "She didn't do anything," Layla added. Julian said only no. She didn't. Then he pulled out his phone and sent a message. "They moved Celeste to the back. Said there was a mix-up. No confirmation. Just made her leave." The reply was swift. "Which flight?" Julian typed the number. He didn't have to explain further. In the back, Celeste's phone buzzed in her purse. She read the message. Then a second came in. "Don't worry." At the front of the aircraft, Ms. Tinsley moved efficiently from row to row, handing out drinks and refreshing towels. But when she passed Julian's row, she didn't meet his eyes. She didn't speak to his children. Micah frowned. She didn't ask if we wanted anything. Julian just placed a hand on his son's shoulder and waited. He hadn't said everything he needed to it. Meanwhile, in the cockpit, Captain Monroe was reviewing the flight plan when a blinking alert appeared on his console. He opened the message, read it twice, and let out a quiet breath. "Contact from the board," he said to his co-pilot. "Looks like we've got a situation in cabin." He picked up the crew intercom and buzzed the flight attendant panel. "Tinsley here," she answered crisply. "Ms. Tinsley, please report to the cockpit immediately." She blinked, caught off guard. "Understood." When she arrived, Captain Monroe gestured to the screen beside him. "Explain this," he said. She read the message. There was a manifest issue. A woman didn't appear on the elite list. I moved her to economy to seat a higher priority passenger. "Did you check the manifest?" he asked. "I skimmed it. We were boarding, and she didn't match the usual profile." "Ms. Tinsley," he interrupted, "that man in 2C is Julian Hart, CEO of Horizon Group Holdings." Her blood ran cold. "He's the owner of this airline," the co-pilot added. "And you just forced his wife to the back of the plane." She couldn't speak. The realization hit like turbulence. The captain continued, "You will personally escort Mrs. Hart back to first class, and you will apologize publicly." "Yes, sir," she whispered. She returned to the cabin, her hands trembling as she walked the length of the plane. Eyes followed her now. The silence was no longer passive, it was judgmental. She stopped in front of Celeste, who was still seated between strangers. "Mrs. Hart," she said, "there's been a mistake. I'd like to escort you back to your original seat." Celeste didn't move. "A mistake?" "Yes." "Apologize for the confusion." Celeste looked at her calmly. "You didn't ask anyone else to move. You didn't check twice." Passengers nearby pretended not to listen, but they heard every word. "I had my ticket," Celeste said quietly. "I belonged in that seat." "Ms." Tinsley could only nod. Celeste stood and walked the aisle again. But this time heads turned. Eyes softened. When Layla saw her, she burst into a smile. "Mom." Julian helped her back into her seat. He didn't speak to Ms. Tinsley. He didn't have to. Later, as the cabin dimmed and the flight continued, phones buzzed. Passengers who had silently filmed the exchange uploaded the footage. Comments flooded in. "Grace under pressure. Why is this still happening in 2025? The airline board received the clips instantly. Statements were drafted. HR was looped in. When the plane landed, no one moved. The intercom buzzed. "Ms. Tinsley, please gather your things and report to the gate team immediately." Gasps echoed through the cabin. She stood, pale and stiff, and exited under silent scrutiny. The Harts disembarked last. A young attendant named Brielle approached them. "Is there anything I can get for your family?" she asked softly. Celeste smiled. "We're fine. Thank you." Later, as the family moved through the terminal, Darren's phone lit up with messages. The media was already picking it up. Headlines followed within hours. First-class incident sparks backlash. Airline CEO's wife removed mid-flight. Grace, bias, and silence at 30,000 feet. But Julian and Celeste didn't jump to interviews. They didn't post. They let the silence speak. The next day, Julian sat in a boardroom addressing his executive team. "This wasn't about a seat," he said. "It was about who we see and who we choose not to." Reforms came quickly. Crew retraining. Bias education. Passenger reporting systems. Celeste, meanwhile, began speaking not in press conferences, but in community spaces. The schools. At nonprofits. In rooms filled with people who lived through similar moments without an audience. She didn't talk about revenge. She talked about recognition, dignity, humanity. Letters poured in. From students. From mothers. From elderly travelers who had long been ignored. Weeks passed. The viral clip faded from trending tabs. But the ripple remained. And somewhere on a different flight, a mother sat with her kids in first class and bothered. Undoubted because of one woman's calm refusal to shrink. The sky hadn't changed overnight, but it had shifted. Quietly. Permanently. And that was enough for now.